Hi, guys. Today we will start with the story The Young Greek Who Became a Cook in Ancient Rome. In one of the bustling districts of Rome lived a young Greek named Nicandros. He had been brought to the city as a slave, but was known not only for his courage, but also for an extraordinary talent. He was an excellent cook, a skill he had learned back home on the shores of the Aegean Sea. When Nicandros' master hosted a grand feast, the boy secretly helped in the kitchen. His dishes amazed all the guests. Tender lamb infused with herbs and fragrant vegetables cooked with olive oil and honey. The master's chefs were surprised that such a young slave could create such flavors. Over time, the master realized that Nicandros was not just a slave, but a talented cook. He freed him and appointed him as the head chef of his villa. Nicandros introduced new recipes from Greece to Roman cuisine: fresh cheeses, olives, herbs, and spices. People began to come from far away to taste his dishes, and the fame of the young Greek who transformed the kitchen of ancient Rome quickly spread throughout the city. Nicandros proved that even a slave could become a master of his craft if his heart burned with passion for the art. Capture and journey to Rome. Nicandros was born in a small village on the shores of the Aegean Sea, where the sun reflected on the blue waves and the air smelled of fresh herbs in the sea. His family was simple but kind. His father was a fisherman, and his mother cooked delicious meals from local ingredients. It was from her that Nicandros first learned the art of cooking. One day, when Nicandros was only 12, Roman soldiers came to their village. They captured many villagers, including Nicandros. His life changed in an instant. He was sold into slavery and sent to faraway Rome, a huge and noisy city full of new dangers and opportunities. A new life and first job. In Rome, Nicandros ended up in the house of a wealthy Roman named Marcus, where he lived and worked with other slaves. His first job was hard, carrying water, cleaning floors, and washing the kitchen. But Nicandros did not give up. Every evening he watched the cooks and secretly tried to repeat their recipes. He remembered the taste of Greek dishes, fresh herbs, and olives, and dreamed of one day cooking not just food, but masterpieces that would amaze people. First, success. One day, an important guest, a senator, came to Marcus's house and was to stay for dinner. The head cook was busy and tired, and Nicandros saw this and offered to help. Marcus agreed, although he had doubts. Nicandros prepared a simple but exquisite dish: stewed fish with lemon and herbs, seasoned with olive oil. A dish he often ate at home. The guest was delighted. Nicandros received his first recognition and a little freedom to choose ingredients. Learning and inspiration. Nicandros began learning from Marcus's cooks, quickly absorbing their skills, but not forgetting his Greek roots. He combined Roman traditions with Greek recipes, adding olive oil, honey, and fresh herbs, which made his dishes unique. Every day he experimented, creating new flavors. His fame grew, and both slaves and masters came to him for advice. New responsibilities. After Nicandros proved his skills, Marcus entrusted him with more responsibilities. He was given his own kitchen area and a small supply of ingredients. Nicandros no longer just cooked. He planned menus, managed supplies, and taught other slaves simple recipes. He increasingly introduced Greek ingredients, which surprised the Roman cooks. But the results spoke for themselves. The dishes became tastier, and the guests happier. Secret lessons. Nicandros understood that mastering his craft required more knowledge. He began to overhear conversations in libraries and scholars' homes, trying to learn more about herbs, spices, and cooking techniques. One day, a guest arrived at Marcus's house, a woman from the elite circle, knowledgeable about medicine and cuisine. She noticed Nicandros and offered him lessons on herbs and the healing properties of plants. These lessons opened new horizons for him. Nicandros no longer just cooked delicious food, but also cared about the health of those who ate his dishes. Trials and faith in a dream life in Marcus's house was becoming increasingly difficult despite Nicandros' successes. Not all the slaves, and even some of the cooks, accepted his ambitions and ideas. Some believed the young Greek was just a slave trying to do too much and envied his achievements. There were even those who deliberately set traps to unsettle and confuse him. One day, after an especially stressful day, when Nicandros had to fix others' mistakes and calm the master's dissatisfaction, he sat on a bench in the courtyard and thought about his fate. It was hard, but he remembered his mother's words. If you believe in your work and put your soul into it, no obstacle can stop you. With this thought, Nicandros decided not to give up. He began keeping a journal where he wrote recipes, cooking tips, and notes about spices he wanted to try. It became more than just work. It became a true calling and hope for freedom. His faith and persistence were noticed not only by Marcus and the villa's guests, but also by the other slaves, who gradually began to respect him. Nicandros taught them that the kitchen was not just hard labor, but an art capable of bringing people together. Secrets of ancient recipes and discovering his own style. Over time, Nicandros delved deeper into the world of culinary arts. He wanted not just to repeat known dishes, but to create something of his own, new and unique, something that could make his name famous even beyond Marcus's villa. He began searching for ancient recipes and studying their secrets. In his free hours, Nicandros would secretly go out into the city, visiting markets and spice shops. There, he learned to distinguish fresh herbs and spices he had only seen in books or heard about in conversations. He wrote down names, asked sellers about their origins and how to use them. He paid special attention to rare and expensive ingredients: saffron, bay leaves, pine nuts, and honey. People noticed him and started inviting him to secret gatherings of local cooks and culinary experts, where they discussed ancient traditions and new methods. For a slave, this was a rare opportunity to learn how the great masters of the past prepared their dishes. Nicandros listened carefully, took notes, and asked questions, gradually building his own vision of cooking, combining ancient Greek recipes with Roman traditions and adding what he had learned from herbalists and experts. Nicandros created new dishes no one had tasted before. His signature dish became a lamb stew with honey and rosemary, garnished with pine nuts and fresh olives, simple yet exquisite, hearty and aromatic. This dish soon became legendary among the villa's residents and guests. People said that once they tasted Nicandros' stew, they forgot all their worries and eagerly awaited the next dinner. Marcus himself was proud of his cook because thanks to Nicandros, guests were satisfied and often returned. But Nicandros understood that his journey did not end there. He dreamed of freedom, of opening his own kitchen where he could create and teach others without fear or limits. Every evening he worked harder on new recipes, experimenting with ingredients to find the perfect balance of flavors. At the same time, Nicandros never forgot his roots. In every dish, he put a piece of his native Aegean Sea, the scent of olive groves, and the warmth of sunny days from his childhood village. These memories gave him strength and inspiration to move forward. Inside, Nicandros felt growing the sense that one day his story would become more than just a tale about a slave and a cook, but a legend about a man who overcame fate and found his calling through the art of cooking. Lessons of friendship and tests of trust. Nicandros' life in Marcus's house was gradually changing, but along with the growth of his skills and status came new challenges. Among the other slaves, he made friends, those who valued him not only for his talent, but also for his kindness, patience, and willingness to help. Especially close were two, Luca and Gaius, with whom Nicandros often shared his ideas and plans. Luca was a blacksmith, a strong and reliable man who could find a way out of any situation. Gaius worked as a gardener and knew a lot about plants. This gift became a true blessing for Nicandros. Thanks to Gaius, he was able to grow some herbs and vegetables right in the villa's courtyard, which greatly expanded the variety of his dishes. However, not everything was easy. Among the slaves and servants in Marcus's house, there were those who envied Nicandros and tried to harm him. One of the cooks, Marcellus, secretly spread rumors that Nicandros was stealing food or trying to spoil meals. These accusations threatened serious consequences. One evening, when Nicandros was working late, Marcellus placed spoiled ingredients in his kitchen cupboard. The next morning, the master found them and suspected Nicandros. But Nicandros' friends, Luca and Gaius, defended him, telling what they had seen. Marcellus stealing supplies and falsifying reports. This incident strengthened the trust between Nicandros and Marcus and showed how important friendship and support are in difficult times. Nicandros realized that one cannot walk through life alone. True success comes with people you can trust. Inspired by the support of his friends and the renewed respect of his master, Nicandros began to work even harder. He perfected his recipes, studied new cooking techniques, and planned how one day he would open his own business, a small tavern where everyone could taste the best dishes with an Eastern flair. He often remembered the lessons from the woman guest who taught him about the properties of herbs and began applying this knowledge to create dishes that were not only delicious, but also healthy. Nicandros dreamed that his kitchen could heal souls and bodies, bringing people together at a common table. Thus, in the heart of the young Greek, not just a passion for food was born, but a true mission, through taste and care for people to show the beauty of life and the power of friendship. Evenings in the kitchen and dreams of freedom. The nights in Marcus's house were filled with sounds, the gentle rustling of the wind through the olive groves, the distant hum of Rome's streets, and the quiet, steady work in the kitchen. For Nicandros, this time was special, when the day's bustle quieted down, and he could focus on creativity. Often, after all the guests had left and the other slaves were resting, Nicandros stayed behind in the kitchen. He would light a small oil lamp, carefully take out his notebooks from the chests, and begin rewriting recipes, improving them. Every new dish he invented was made with his dream in mind. One day to have his own tavern where he could cook freely and teach others. He recorded not only ingredients, but also the nuances of flavor combinations, cooking times, temperatures, and even the mood each dish should evoke. Cooking had become philosophy, art, and a way to express himself. During these evenings, Nicandros dreamed of freedom. He imagined the day he could step out of the shadow of slavery and open the doors of his small kitchen to everyone, Romans, Greeks, slaves, and free people alike. His kitchen would be a place where people forgot their differences and united at a common table. He understood the path would be long and difficult, but his faith in his dream was stronger than his fears and doubts. In his memory lived his mother and her stories of a home where taste and love were inseparable. He wanted to bring that atmosphere into his new life. Sometimes other slaves who shared his passion joined him. Together, they discussed new ideas, shared knowledge about herbs and spices, and learned from each other. It became a small community of support and inspiration. Marcus's house, though a place of slavery, became an arena for Nicandros to develop his talent and express himself. He knew that cooking was not just food, but a language capable of telling stories, conveying emotions, and connecting hearts. Thus, in the quiet of the kitchen at night, not only new dishes were born, but also hope. Hope for a new life, freedom, and recognition. Trials of fate and strength of character. Day by day, Nicandros' life became more difficult. Despite Marcus's recognition and the respect of other slaves, his position remained precarious. In Roman society, a slave was always a slave, without rights to his own will, freedom, or dignity. Nicandros knew this and accepted it as a harsh truth. But deep inside, he continued to hold hope for a better future. One day, a new mistress arrived at Marcus's house, Marcus's wife, Livia. She was a strict and commanding woman, used to controlling everything around her with an iron hand. Livia quickly noticed Nicandros' influence over the kitchen and the household atmosphere, but instead of supporting him, she grew suspicious. Livia believed that a slave, no matter how talented, should have no privileges or influence. She began imposing rules and restrictions that made Nicandros's work more difficult, limiting access to ingredients, demanding absolute obedience, and forbidding communication with other slaves without her permission. For Nicandros, this became a true trial. He understood that one mistake could ruin all his work and dreams. But instead of breaking, he gathered all his willpower and determination. Nicandros learned to work even more carefully, secretly developing his skills and expanding his knowledge. During this time, Luca and Gaius became his true support. They helped him obtain necessary ingredients, hide his notes, and even protect him from unfair punishments. Friendship became not just support for Nicandros, it became a strength that helped him endure and fight. One day, Nicandros decided he could no longer wait for a miracle. He had to act. He began secretly preparing special dishes for Livia, hoping to win her trust and change her opinion. He used his knowledge of herbs and spices to create exquisite dishes that could please even her strict palate. The process was difficult. He risked being caught and punished, but his skill and caution helped. When Livia first tasted his food, she was surprised. The flavor was unusual, rich, and delicate. Slowly but surely, her attitude began to change. This became the first step toward Nicandros' ability not only to survive, but to build a future. He realized that strength of character and patience were the main qualities that would help him overcome any trial. Secrets of spices and the art of persuasion. Day by day, Nicandros delved deeper into the world of spices and herbs, knowledge that was almost sacred in Rome. Despite all the restrictions and Livia's mistrust, the young Greek never stopped seeking new ways to grow, studying the subtleties of aromas and their effects on taste and health. He began visiting secret bazaars and markets where traders from distant lands offered rare spices: cardamom, cinnamon, turmeric, myrrh. Nicandros eagerly learned to combine them, striving not just to add flavor, but to create true symphonies of taste. Each spice was like an instrument in an orchestra, and he aimed to become a true maestro. However, his successes did not go unnoticed. Livia increasingly inspected the kitchen, trying to catch Nicandros making a mistake or disobeying. But he learned to be careful and discreet. With the help of Luca and Gaius, he organized a secret storage for the best ingredients where Livia had no access. Moreover, Nicandros began to develop his art of persuasion. He understood that simply cooking well was not enough. He needed to earn respect and trust by skillfully communicating with the masters and guests. He learned to listen, notice small details, and anticipate people's desires and fears. When guests arrived at Marcus's villa, Nicandros subtly observed their reactions, studying which dishes inspired delight and which left them indifferent. He carefully selected the menu, striving to surprise and please everyone. His reputation grew, along with his opportunities. One day, an important guest arrived at the villa, a senator from a neighboring city. His influence was immense, and a successful feast could change Nicandros' fate. Masterfully using rare spices and herbs, Nicandros prepared a banquet that caused a genuine sensation. The senator was delighted and personally thanked the young cook, praising his talent and boldness. This event became a turning point. Seeing Nicandros' recognition among influential guests, Livia gradually began to ease her restrictions. She allowed him access to more valuable ingredients and permitted him to teach young slaves the art of cooking. But Nicandros did not forget that his main dream was freedom and owning his own business. Every morning, before the day's bustle began, he quietly repeated to himself the plan of action that would one day lead him to independence. The art of spices, patience, and the skill of persuasion. All these became his weapons on the path to freedom, allowing Nicandros not only to survive, but also to gradually change his fate. Secret meetings and an emerging plan time passed, and Nicandros increasingly realized that to achieve his dream, he needed not only cooking skills, but also allies, support, and the ability to act beyond Marcus's villa. He understood that freedom was not only a gift, but the result of a careful plan and courageous decisions. One evening, when most slaves were already resting and the house was quiet, Nicandros secretly went out into the courtyard. There he met with several other slaves from nearby villas, people who, like him, dreamed of freedom and a new life. Among them was an old slave named Demetrios, who had once served in another household and knew the city's back streets well. Demetrios spoke about secret gatherings held in one of Rome's hidden basements, places where slaves and free people discussed ways to fight for their rights, exchanged news, and planned escapes. Nicandros listened with great interest, realizing this might be the key to his future. But such meetings were extremely dangerous. Roman masters harshly punished any sign of disobedience, and many slaves were afraid even to speak about freedom aloud. Nevertheless, Nicandros felt determination and courage to join this movement. Over the following weeks, he began secretly attending these meetings, carefully hiding his activities from Livia and other overseers. He learned much about potential allies, places where support could be found, and people ready to help in case of escape. However, Nicandros did not forget his kitchen duties. He continued perfecting his dishes, making them more exquisite and original. His reputation grew, and even Livia started trusting him more, though she remained watchful. Nicandros paid special attention to planning for the future. He recorded his ideas, mapped escape routes, studied laws and customs to understand the best way to act in various situations. These secret meetings and plans became a new life for Nicandros, a life between two worlds, slavery and freedom. He knew many trials lay ahead, but he was ready to fight to the end for his dream. The art of persuasion and the first school for slave cooks. After several months of secret meetings and diligent work in the kitchen, Nicandros began to realize that his talent and knowledge could become not only a means of survival, but also a tool to change the lives of many slaves around him. He dreamed not only of his own freedom, but also of passing the art of cooking to those who, like him, were in bondage. Understanding that education and skills were the key to self-development and respect, Nicandros decided to open something like a school for young slaves eager to learn to cook. But he had to do it in secret from Livia and the other masters. For this, he chose a small room in the villa's utility quarters, where the first school could take place. In the evenings after the main work was done, he gathered a group of several trusted slaves, Luca, Gaius, and a few other young men who showed ambition and talent. Nicandros taught them not just how to cook, but how to understand flavors, handle ingredients properly, and use spices. He told them about the traditions of Greek and Roman cuisine and explained how to turn ordinary ingredients into true culinary masterpieces. For Nicandros, this became more than just teaching. It became a mission. He saw how his students gradually changed, becoming more confident, gaining pride and hope. Cooking became not only a job, but an art, a way to express themselves and find inner freedom even in slavery. But this activity was risky. Livia was still watching closely, and Nicandros knew any mistake could bring punishment not only to himself, but also to his students. Therefore, classes were held very carefully, only at night by the dim light of an oil lamp, and only among the most loyal. Meanwhile, Nicandros continued to perfect his dishes, experimenting with new recipes and ingredients that he managed to get with the help of Luca and Gaius. He understood that his success in the kitchen was not only a path to personal freedom, but also an opportunity to earn the master's respect, which gave more chances to protect his students. The school for slave cooks gradually grew and became a real center of knowledge and inspiration. Nicandros dreamed that one day his students would open their own kitchens and perhaps even become free men. Every evening, he reminded himself that patience, diligence, and faith in the dream were the qualities that would help him, and all his comrades achieve the cherished freedom. The path to freedom, through trials and betrayal. Nicandros' life was becoming increasingly difficult. Despite his successes in the kitchen and the support of his students, A shadow of danger was growing around him. In Rome, slavery was harsh law, and every step toward freedom was filled with risk and trials. One day, on an ordinary day, a new overseer arrived at Marcus's villa, a strict and suspicious man named Tiberius. He immediately noticed that Nicandros behaved differently from the other slaves. His confidence, knowledge, and influence in the household aroused Tiberius's distrust. Tiberius began watching Nicandros and soon suspected something was wrong. He started questioning other slaves, trying to learn what happened in the kitchen after work. Nicandros realized his secrets were in danger, but the most painful trial was betrayal. One of Nicandros' students, a young slave named Marcus, out of fear and desire to survive, told Tiberius about the secret school and plans to escape. This blow was unexpected and very harsh. When Livia and Tiberius learned the truth, they arranged a harsh interrogation of Nicandros and the others involved. Nicandros was ready for this. He always knew the risk was great but could not stop. Fear spread through the house, and it seemed all hope was lost. However, Nicandros kept calm and courage. He admitted to organizing the school, but skillfully presented it as an attempt to improve the slaves' skills, to enhance the quality of food for the masters. His words found resonance with some servants, and even with Livia, who valued quality cooking. Tiberius was uncompromising and demanded punishment. But Marcus, feeling guilty, publicly apologized to Nicandros and promised to help make amends. This shocked everyone and cast doubt on the overseer's decisions. In the end, despite Tiberius's threats, Livia decided to keep the school, but under strict supervision. Nicandros and his students were given even more responsibilities and pledged to work harder, proving their loyalty. This trial was a lesson for Nicandros. The path to freedom is long and full of obstacles, but every fall is just a step toward success. He strengthened his relationships with Livia and other slaves, becoming even more cautious and wise. In Nicandros' heart lived the hope that one day, patience and faith in his dream would help him not only survive, but truly change his fate. Secret dreams and a bright future. After the trials and betrayal, Nicandros realized that strength was not only in knowledge and skill, but also in the hope that burns even in the darkest conditions. His heart filled with new determination. Freedom must become a reality, not just a dream. Every morning before sunrise, Nicandros would go out onto the villa's roof, where he could momentarily forget about slavery by watching the quiet awakening of Rome. Here, among the sounds of the first birds and the distant noise of the city, he allowed himself to dream of a life where he chooses his own fate, where his art is recognized and valued. He began keeping a journal, a rarity for a slave. But thanks to a secret benefactor among the free people, he managed to obtain a small scroll and ink. In his journal, Nicandros recorded his thoughts, plans, and recipes that would one day help him open his own kitchen. One of his brightest ideas was to create a special dish that combined the best traditions of Greek and Roman cuisine, a symbol of a new life where culture and freedom go hand in hand. He dreamed that one day guests would come to him not as a slave, but as a master, equal among equals. Meanwhile, the school for slave cooks continued to grow. The students began experimenting on their own, bringing their ideas and creating unique recipes. Nicandros inspired them to see cooking not only as work, but as an art and a way to change their lives. An important part of the plan was preparing for a possible escape. Nicandros and a few trusted students studied routes, found safe hiding places, and sought people ready to help. They understood that escape was not only fleeing, but the beginning of a new life, full of challenges, but also opportunities. Additionally, Nicandros strengthened ties with other slaves, and even some free craftsmen who could become allies. He was gradually building a support network, realizing that together their chances for freedom were much higher. But Nicandros never lost his caution. He knew that one wrong step could cost the lives and freedom of not only himself, but also his comrades. Therefore, every meeting and discussion was held under the strictest secrecy. Despite all difficulties, hope and faith in a better future supported Nicandros and his students. They understood that art, patience, and unity were the forces that would help them overcome any obstacles. In the evenings, when the sun set below the horizon and the city fell silent, Nicandros looked at the stars and whispered to himself, "One day I will be free, and my name will be known not as a slave, but as the greatest cook of Rome." Mastery and secret lessons. In the shadows of the great temples, several years had passed since Nicandros first stepped into the kitchen of Marcus's villa. Now he was not just a slave cook. He was a true master whose talent and knowledge were recognized even among the free cooks and artisans of Rome. Yet the path to freedom still lay far ahead, and Nicandros knew that knowledge was his strongest weapon. To expand his understanding, Nicandros began secretly visiting the ancient temples and markets of Rome at night. These places were not only centers of religious life, but also treasure troves of knowledge about herbs, spices, and rare products. It was here that he met various people, from wise priests to traders from distant lands. One night, hiding in the shadow of the columns of the Temple of Jupiter, Nicandros met an elderly apothecary named Faust, who turned out to be a skilled healer and herbalist. Faust noticed the young slave's keen interest in the healing properties of plants and decided to share some of his knowledge with him. For months, Nicandros studied not only cooking, but also the basics of medicine and herbal therapy. He learned how to use herbs and spices, not only for flavor, but also for health benefits, giving his dishes special value. He secretly incorporated this knowledge into recipes for the villa's masters, further strengthening his position. Together with Faust, Nicandros discussed the philosophy of nutrition and the influence of food on the soul and body. These conversations broadened his worldview and made him not just a cook, but a true sage of the kitchen. At the same time, Nicandros continued to improve his teaching skills. He created study materials, wrote down recipes and tips to pass them on to his students and to those who might one day want to learn the art of cooking. Nicandros' students now gathered not only at the villa, but also in hidden places around the city, in basements and attics, where they could safely exchange knowledge and experience. Nicandros understood that his school had become more than just a culinary class. It was a community united by the dream of freedom and self-expression. But new knowledge and skills came with new dangers. Tiberius, displeased with Nicandros' growing influence, wove conspiracies trying to undermine his reputation and regain control over the slaves. Nicandros had to hide his activities even more carefully and always stay one step ahead of his enemies. Despite everything, Nicandros believed that through wisdom, patience, and the support of friends, he would achieve his dream. His kitchen had become a symbol of hope and change, a place where even in slavery, beauty and freedom could be created. Threads of fate, connections, conspiracies, and hope for freedom. Nicandros' life increasingly resembled a complex tapestry, an intertwining of hopes, fears, secrets, and plans. Around him thrived the bustling life of great Rome, while he, a slave from Greece, built his small world of culinary art and dreamed of freedom. Over the years working at the villa, Nicandros met many people, slaves and freedmen, craftsmen and merchants, soldiers and scholars. Some became his allies and secret helpers, who believed in his dream and were ready to assist. Especially important was his contact with Marcus Fabricius, a former legionnaire who, after service, took up trade and had many connections. Marcus respected Nicandros for his intelligence and patience, and secretly provided him with information about safe roads and places where fugitive slaves could find refuge. However, the shadow of Tiberius still loomed over Nicandros. The new overseer did not relent and wove webs of intrigue to discredit and weaken the slave. He began spreading rumors about dissatisfaction and even alleged conspiracies among the slaves, trying to sow discord and fear. Nicandros, possessing a rare gift of diplomacy, skillfully resisted these attacks. He maintained peace and order among the slaves, advising his students not to panic and not to trust suspicious words. His influence grew, and even some of Livia's servants began to respect him for his wisdom and fairness. In secret meetings, Nicandros discussed future plans with his closest students. They dreamed of the day they could open their own kitchen, free from fear and violence. Nicandros believed that education and art would be the key to change, because a free person who can create will always be valued. A special place in their plans was the idea of creating a secret network of mutual aid to help fugitive slaves and those who wanted to start a new life. Nicandros understood that freedom was not only a personal achievement, but also a responsibility to others. Meanwhile, he continued to perfect his culinary skills. Experimenting with new recipes and ingredients he managed to procure from markets and allies. His dishes became more exquisite, and rumors of his extraordinary skill spread far beyond the villa. But Nicandros did not forget that true freedom was not only external independence, but also inner harmony. He taught his students not only how to cook, but also how to maintain calm of spirit, resilience, and faith in the better. Each new day brought new trials, but also new opportunities. Nicandros was confident that despite all difficulties, their shared path led to a bright future where art and freedom would go hand in hand. Art as a weapon, kitchen, politics, and the struggle for freedom. In the height of the Roman Empire's glory, as the city's greatness stretched toward the heavens, Nicandros understood that his mission was much more than just cooking food. The kitchen had become his arena of struggle, not with bloodshed, but no less important. He realized that, under slavery, the art of cooking could become a powerful tool that unites people, changes their destinies, and opens doors to freedom. Every recipe, every meal he created was filled with deep meaning. Nicandros experimented with ingredients, striving to unite the ancient traditions of Hellas and the new tastes of Rome in his dishes. It was not simply mixing ingredients, but a symbolic act of joining cultures, a reminder that people, despite their differences, could be united. An important part of Nicandros' work was teaching his students not only the techniques, but also the history of ingredients, the origins of spices, and the significance of each dish. He believed that understanding the cultural context helped people to appreciate life more deeply and to fight for their rights. One evening, when stars shone brightly over Rome, Nicandros invited his closest students to a secret room in the villa. There, they discussed important questions: how their art could become a force capable of changing the world. They decided to create a cookbook that would be not only a collection of culinary knowledge, but also a message of hope. Each recipe would carry a part of their story, their struggle, and their dream of freedom. The book was meant to become a secret symbol of resistance, passed from hand to hand among slaves and sympathizers. But as Nicandros' influence grew, so did the danger. Tiberius, seeing that the slave was becoming a center of attraction and inspiration, intensified surveillance and intimidation. Nicandros had to learn not only to be a master of the kitchen, but also a master of disguise. Every action carefully planned, every word chosen with caution. In these difficult conditions, Nicandros found support in his students and allies. Together, they explored ways to communicate through cooking, encrypted recipes, symbolic dish names, and even special methods of serving food that could act as codes for their community. Beyond cooking, Nicandros began focusing on character building, courage, patience, and wisdom, without which true freedom was impossible. His students learned not only to wield knives and fire, but also to understand that every detail mattered in the great game of life. One night, in the shadows, Nicandros met with an influential patrician who secretly supported the idea of freeing slaves. This man promised help, but demanded full trust and caution. This meeting became a turning point. Now Nicandros bore not only the fate of his students, but the hopes of many. It was then that Nicandros realized his kitchen had become a true fortress, a place where even in the harshest conditions, a bright spark of freedom could be born. He resolutely decided to move forward, no matter what, because true mastery was not only the skill to cook, but the power to inspire and lead. Secret alliances and trials of fate. Nicandros's path to freedom. Rome continued to bustle and live its tumultuous life. The streets filled with the voices of merchants, the clattering of carts, and the majestic ringing of temple bells. Amid this endless flow of stories, Nicandros's fate was just one among many. But for him, it meant everything: struggle, dreams, and hope. Understanding that the path to freedom required not only skill and courage, but also strategic thinking, Nicandros began weaving delicate networks of alliances. He knew it was impossible to stand against the power of Rome alone. Unity with those who shared his ideals was necessary. One such ally was Gaius Valerius, a young patrician who hid his discontent with the cruelty of slave owners behind a mask of obedience. Gaius was impressed by Nicandros not only as a cook, but as a man with clear purpose and a strong spirit. A friendship based on mutual respect and understanding blossomed between them. With Gaius's help, Nicandros gained access to the closed circles of power, where laws and people's fates were discussed. Through subtle hints and hidden messages, he conveyed information about the condition of slaves, trying to awaken compassion and a desire for change. Meanwhile, Nicandros continued to develop his culinary school. Students honed their skills, learning not only to cook, but also to understand the symbolism of food, passing messages and ideas through it. The school became a place not just of teaching, but of cultural revival, where new thoughts about freedom and dignity were born. However, danger did not recede. Tiberius, suspecting secret meetings and connections of Nicandros, intensified surveillance and resorted to harsher measures: arrests, interrogations, and threats. Nicandros had to carefully hide his actions, trusting only the closest. One of the hardest trials was the attempt by an infiltrator, a slave bought by Tiberius to destroy their network from within. Thanks to his attentiveness and intuition, Nicandros uncovered the traitor, but the incident showed how fragile their security was. With each day, Nicandros understood more deeply that the struggle for freedom was a long game, requiring not only strength, but patience, cunning, and mutual support. His heart filled with resolve and his mind with new plans. He placed special hope in the young students who absorbed knowledge and became not just cooks, but carriers of the spirit of change. Their success symbolized to Nicandros that even from the harshest circumstances, a new life could be born, free, creative, and full of meaning. On one such day, when Rome seemed especially formidable and cold, Nicandros stood by the window of his room and looked at the city lights. He knew many trials lay ahead, but he was ready to meet them with his head held high. His dream of freedom and justice lived in every recipe, in every breath, and nothing could extinguish that flame. The dawn of hope, the first spark of change. With the arrival of spring, when the air was filled with the scent of blooming trees and fresh greenery, a new chapter began in the life of Nicandros and his students. A time when dreams started to take tangible shape, and the shadows of fear gradually receded before the light of hope. After months of secret meetings and preparations, Nicandros and his closest allies decided to take the first step toward freedom, to organize a secret festival where not only slaves but also sympathetic free citizens could gather. It was a risky but necessary move, because only through unity and mutual understanding could society begin to change. The festival was planned on the outskirts of the city, in an abandoned amphitheater, a place where they could meet unnoticed. Nicandros and his students worked tirelessly, preparing dishes that would symbolize unity and freedom. Every ingredient was chosen deliberately, herbs and spices from the ancient Greek lands, meat and grain from Roman provinces, all symbolizing the connection between two cultures and a shared path to a new life. On the day of the festival, the atmosphere was tense yet filled with joyful anticipation. By evening, several hundred people had gathered in the amphitheater: slaves, free craftsmen, merchants, and even some members of the nobility, ready to support change. Nicandros gave a speech full of inspiration and strength. He spoke about how true freedom was not only the right to control one's own life, but also respect for others, understanding, and cooperation. His words resonated deeply with the audience, sparking applause and promises to support the new movement. The festival was accompanied by music, dancing, and, of course, unusual treats that became symbols of change. For the first time in a long while, people felt part of something greater than the daily struggle to survive. It was a moment when hope began to shine brighter. However, Nicandros understood perfectly well that this was only the beginning. The power of Rome was not going to yield without a fight, and difficult trials awaited that would demand all their strength of spirit and unity. But, for the first time in a long time, he saw that the dream of freedom could become reality if people united and refused to abandon their ideals. After the festival, Nicandros returned to his kitchen with a new sense of responsibility and inspiration. He knew every next step would be harder, but also more confident. His school was becoming not only a place to learn culinary arts, but also a forge for new leaders, ready to lead people to change. In the quiet of the night, as the city slept, Nicandros recorded new recipes, weaving into them stories and symbols that would be passed down to future generations. For him, the kitchen had become not just a craft, but a living history of struggle and hope, one he was ready to pass on. The flame in the heart, trials of faith and strength. Spring gradually gave way to the scorching summer, and Rome was filled with sounds and smells that for many became the backdrop of everyday life. But for Nicandros and his community, signs of approaching change. Their secret festival had been the first bright spark of hope, but ahead lay a long and thorny path where every decision could be fateful. Nicandros realized that their actions were now under close watch. Even the most cautious words could lead to the network's rupture and arrests. He taught his students not only the art of cooking, but also the art of silence, how to keep secrets, read between the lines, and perceive danger in the smallest details. The school transformed into a refuge where people not only learned to cook, but found the strength to believe in themselves and their dreams. Nicandros often said that the flame in the heart is what makes a person truly free. This flame cannot be extinguished by chains or fear. One of the trials was a betrayal attempt among the students. Someone they trusted had been bribed or intimidated and was passing information to Tiberius. This blow was painful. Trust, like fragile glass, cracked, and restoring it was not easy. Nicandros held long talks with each student, reminding them of their goals and the importance of unity. Meanwhile, Tiberius did not relent. He increased pressure and issued orders to break the spirit of resistance. Nicandros had to plan even more carefully, calculate every step, and teach the students to be not only cooks, but masters of disguise and cunning. Yet at that moment, true heroes emerged. Young slaves and free citizens who were not afraid to take risks discovered new possibilities. They used not only the kitchen, but also crafts, art, and music to sustain the spirit of resistance and convey important messages. Nicandros became more than just a teacher. He became a symbol of hope and strength. His words and deeds inspired many to move forward despite fear and danger. He knew victory would not be quick, but every effort brought them closer to the goal. One hot summer evening, when the city seemed especially tense, Nicandros gathered his students and close friends. They discussed plans for the future, how to expand influence, find new allies, and preserve what had already been achieved. He said that the kitchen was not just a place for cooking, but an arena for change, where every ingredient could become a symbol of struggle, and every recipe a manifesto of freedom. His dream lived in each of them, and together they were ready to fight for a brighter future. Through the shadows of intrigue, the art of survival, and secret signs, the summer in Rome was growing hotter, and with it, the tension in the air thickened. Shadows of intrigue and danger gathered at every corner, forcing Nicandros and his students to remain constantly vigilant. Their struggle for freedom was no longer a secret to the authorities, and every new step demanded utmost caution and wisdom. Under increasing harsh surveillance and control, Nicandros began to incorporate not only culinary knowledge, but also the art of survival into his teachings. He explained that a true master not only creates exquisite dishes, but also knows how to hide, deceive, and read between the lines. Every action could have a double meaning. This was a new game where the stakes were too high to risk recklessly. The school became a place where students studied secret signs and ciphers to transmit messages beyond the ears of the guards. They developed coded recipes, where ingredients and the order of preparation carried hidden messages. Nicandros believed that even the simplest food could become a weapon in their struggle, a way to unite people and instill hope. Nicandros himself worked diligently to improve his skills, studying new techniques, trying forgotten ancient recipes, and adapting them to the conditions of his time. His kitchen was filled with the aromas of spices and herbs that brought not only flavor, but also strength, symbolizing a connection with his native lands and roots. At the same time, he maintained contact with Gaius Valerius, who continued to seek opportunities for political change using his influence. Their communication was cautious and secretive but fruitful. Through Gaius, Nicandros learned about moods in the Senate, and Gaius drew strength and inspiration from the young Greek's courage. However, pressure from Tiberius grew. He not only intensified surveillance, but also began psychological tactics, intimidation, false accusations, attempts to sow doubt and discord among the students. Nicandros understood that the enemy is strongest defeated only by preserving unity and faith in the common cause. One of the hardest moments was the kidnapping of one of the students, a young slave named Lysander, suspected of leaking information. Nicandros put all his efforts into finding him, and with help from trusted people, they managed to bring Lysander back. But this incident became a harsh lesson for everyone. The fight for freedom requires not only strength, but enormous caution. Despite the trials, Nicandros and his team did not lose hope. Each new day offered a chance to learn, grow, and strengthen their cause. Their kitchen became a symbol of resistance, a place where the fire of freedom did not go out, and where, despite everything, new ideas and dreams were born. Deep down, Nicandros understood. Their journey was just beginning, and even more difficult trials awaited. But now he knew, with such people beside him, with such a flame in their hearts, nothing was impossible. Secrets of the kitchen, recipes that change, destinies. As summer drew to a close, the atmosphere in Rome remained tense, but deep in their hearts, Nicandros and his students carried a flame of hope that burned ever brighter. The kitchen, once filled only with the sounds of cooking, had become a place of transformation, a secret laboratory of ideas and strategy. Nicandros understood that simple food preparation was only the tip of the iceberg, beneath which lay a whole world of symbols and meanings. One of the most important discoveries was the power of recipes, how stories, captured in every dish, could become messages that encouraged and united people. Nicandros taught that each dish was not just a combination of ingredients, but a living narrative conveying emotions, dreams, and struggles. He shared with his students ancient legends connected to dishes dating back to the days of Hellas, explaining that every spice and grain was not just food, but part of culture and identity. In their hands, recipes became tools of memory, linking the past and the future. Nicandros developed an entire series of lessons where students learned not only to cook, but to create dishes that could carry secret signs and symbols. For example, a specific order of adding herbs meant support for the freedom movement, while hidden ingredients served as invitations to unite. Such dishes were served at secret meetings, helping identify supporters and strengthen bonds. Moreover, Nicandros used the kitchen to nurture creativity and inventiveness. He encouraged his students to experiment with new combinations, blending Greek and Roman culinary traditions to create something unique that could become a symbol of their time. This freedom of creativity allowed everyone to feel part of a greater cause and inspired new achievements. Equally important was the philosophy Nicandros infused into his teachings, the idea that food should not only nourish the body, but also feed the soul. He taught that cooking was an act of love and care, a bridge between people that could break down walls of alienation and mistrust. At this time, their movement attracted more and more supporters. Free craftsmen, merchants, and even some freedmen sought meetings with Nicandros, eager to contribute. Their kitchen became a place where not only recipes, but also plans for the future were born, where strategies were discussed and dreams built. Nicandros saw his students growing not only as cooks, but as individuals, confident, strong, ready for any challenge. He understood that behind every recipe stood a story, behind every dish, a destiny, and through these stories, the world could be changed. But as their power and influence grew, so did the danger. Tiberius increased pressure, and rumors swirled about possible arrests and betrayals. Nicandros knew tougher trials lay ahead, but now he was certain. Strength lies in unity, and their kitchen was not just a place, but a symbol of struggle, hope, and freedom. The taste of freedom. Unity. Through kitchen and culture. Days passed and autumn slowly wrapped Rome in a golden cloak. Despite the cooling air, the flame in the hearts of Nicandros and his students burned brightly, refusing to let them give up or lose faith. Their kitchen, once a humble place of learning, had transformed into a true center of resistance, where the taste of food intertwined with the power of ideas and the spirit of unity. Nicandros understood that true strength was not only in the skill of cooking, it was in the ability to unite people. He began organizing secret gatherings where, besides culinary lessons, philosophical and cultural topics were discussed. Knowledge of ancient traditions and history was shared, awakening pride in their roots and a desire for freedom. These meetings included not only his students, but also craftsmen, poets, musicians, people of various professions and ages, united by a common goal. They exchanged stories and experiences, created new symbols and rituals that strengthened their spirit and gave them the strength to resist the pressure of the authorities. One of Nicandros's greatest achievements was the creation of a unique menu, where every dish was infused with deep meaning. The dishes told stories of heroes, legends, and myths, calling for resilience and faith. For example, a salad of bitter herbs symbolized trials and hardships, while sweet honey and fruits represented the reward for courage and hope for a bright future. The celebrations they held in a close circle turned into true cultural events, where the kitchen became a temple of freedom and creativity. These evenings were filled with music, poetry, and conversations that encouraged and inspired everyone present. Nicandros saw how his students changed, becoming not just cooks, but bearers of culture and traditions, keepers of memory, and fighters for a brighter future. He believed that it was through art, cuisine, and culture that the fate of an entire people could be changed. But as their influence grew, so did the danger. Tiberius did not stop trying to break this network of support. He increased security, spread rumors, and planted spies. Nicandros and his comrades understood that one wrong move could lead to disaster, so they further strengthened discipline and trust among themselves. Deep in his heart, Nicandros kept the dream of a free world, where the kitchen would be a symbol of unity and peace, where everyone could freely express themselves through creativity and labor. This dream sustained him even in the hardest moments and gave him strength to move forward no matter what. Thus passed months filled with struggle, hope, and faith. The kitchen was no longer just a place to prepare food. It had become the heart of resistance, the place where a new story was born, a story of freedom and human dignity. The flame of hope, secret lessons, and fateful decisions. Autumn in Rome gradually gave way to the first cold days, and the air was filled with a special anxiety. Shadows of suspicion and danger loomed over the city. But in Nicandros' heart burned an unchanging spark of hope that drove him forward, despite everything. The kitchen, which had originally been a place to learn the art of cooking, had now become a true fortress, where not only recipes, but bold ideas of freedom were born. Every day, Nicandros spent long hours with his students, teaching them not only culinary skills, but also the art of observation, patience, and endurance. He explained that a true master must be not only a skilled cook, but also a sensitive strategist who can recognize dangers and make timely decisions. One of the main tasks became creating a system of secret signs and signals that allowed messages to be passed without risk of exposure. Nicandros and his students developed special gestures, codes and recipes, and even specific aromas that were understood only by the initiated. This allowed them to maintain communication with other resistance groups and coordinate actions. At this time, Nicandros met more frequently with Gaius Valerius, his ally in the Senate, who secretly supported their cause. Together, they discussed ways to influence politics, possibilities to soften harsh measures, and, most importantly, create conditions for future changes. Nicandros understood that the struggle for freedom required not only willpower, but also subtle diplomacy. The students noticed their teacher becoming even wiser and stronger, though the weight of responsibility grew heavier each day. Nicandros did not hide his doubts and fears from them, but always called for faith and unity, because only together could they overcome any obstacle. One of the most important moments was the decision of how to treat a group of young slaves who had recently joined their school. Some of them were scared and uncertain. Others were full of determination to fight. Nicandros realized that how they welcomed these new students would determine the future of their movement. He decided to give them not only knowledge, but also a sense of belonging, showing that everyone mattered. Under the cover of night, in a small kitchen room, Nicandros held a special lesson. He told the story of the great Heracles who overcame 12 labors and compared these to their struggle. Each labor symbolized the trials they had to endure for freedom. These words awakened courage and hope in the new students. Meanwhile, pressure from Tiberius increased. Searches began in the homes of their supporters. Spies appeared on the streets, and rumors of traitors multiplied. Nicandros understood that the time for caution was running out, and it was time to make fateful decisions. He gathered his closest comrades and proposed a plan that could change the course of events. To organize a large action that would demonstrate the strength of their movement and unite people on the streets of Rome. It was risky, but necessary. Nicandros felt that this night would be a turning point. Either their dream of freedom would begin to come to life, or everything they fought for would collapse. But deep in his soul, he knew only courage and unity would help them pass through darkness and reach the light. Shadows over Rome, preparing for the decisive day. The nights grew longer, and the cold penetrated deeper into the stone streets of ancient Rome. During this time, when most of the city's inhabitants slept or went about their daily tasks, Nicandros and his comrades worked silently, preparing for an event that could change the course of history. Every moment was filled with tension and anticipation. The unknown hidden future beckoned, but also frightened. In the small kitchen room, lit only by the faint glow of oil lamps, Nicandros's most loyal students gathered. They studied carefully drawn plans, assigned roles, and discussed possible risks. Nicandros understood that even the slightest mistake could lead not just to failure, but to a catastrophe that would crush their dream of freedom. One of the key elements of preparation was training in the art of remaining unnoticed and understanding signals. The students learned to quickly recognize suspicious people, avoid traps, and effectively coordinate in the chaos that could erupt at any moment. Nicandros placed special emphasis on discipline and mutual support. Without these, no struggle could succeed. In these days, it became clear that support among free citizens was gradually growing. Craftsmen, merchants, and even some minor officials, dissatisfied with Tiberius's cruelty and longing for change, began to come to them. These new allies brought not only moral support, but also valuable resources: food, tools, clothing, and information. Nicandros understood that uniting different social strata was the key to success. But alongside growing support came rising tension. Rumors about traitors and spies sent by Tiberius to watch and provoke became more frequent in Rome. Nicandros warned his students about the need for caution and reminded them that the true enemy was fear and distrust of one another. Only strong faith and unity could protect them in these dark times. Special attention was given to preparing for the public action. They planned to organize a large gathering at the Forum, where before a crowd of common citizens, they could voice their demands and demonstrate the power of unity. Nicandros believed such a demonstration would not only awaken the people, but also force the authorities to reconsider the consequences of their repressions. Each of the students knew that danger and uncertainty lay ahead, but along with that came the chance to change fate. Nicandros told them, "Our path will not be easy, but we walk toward a light that cannot be extinguished. Remember, every step you take is a step toward freedom for all of us." On the eve of the decisive day, Nicandros found a moment to be alone. He thought about his family, his people, and the future they all had to build. His heart filled with pride for those who believed in him and fought beside him, and at the same time with anxiety for those not yet ready to risk everything for change. But at that very moment, he felt an unbreakable power, the power of hope burning brighter than any fear or doubt. This power was stronger than any chains or obstacles, and it lived in each of them. The flame that will not go out. Preparation and inner doubts. Winter had come, a time of harsh winds, dark evenings, and unrelenting tension. Rome, usually noisy and bustling with life, seemed to Nicandros and his comrades like a vast machine about to break under too much pressure. But it was precisely now, when everyone around sank into daily routine and feared the future, that sparks of true resistance flared up in the kitchen, in the secret corners of their refuge. Nicandros felt the weight of responsibility growing heavier every day. His students, young slaves, freed Greek artisans, craftsmen from free citizens, expected from him not only culinary skill, but wisdom, inspiration, and confidence. He could not let them down. Every new recipe, every carefully prepared meal was not just a work of hands. It was a message, a cry of the soul, a call to struggle. A vital part of the preparation became daily training and strategy discussions. Nicandros understood that his kitchen was not just a place for cooking, but a school of life, where one learned not only how to cut vegetables and make sauces, but how to build relationships, make difficult decisions, and see the essence of the situation as a whole. He spent long hours explaining how to act in danger, how to remain calm and not succumb to fear. Special attention was paid to mutual support. Nicandros said, "None of us can manage alone. We are a family, and in this lies our strength." They taught each other to support and cover for one another, to share the last piece of bread and never leave anyone in trouble. During these cold days, doubts appeared more often. among the students and even within Nicandros himself. Was it worth the risk? Was the danger too great to lose everything? At such moments, he recalled the words of his teacher from Athens, who said that great deeds require sacrifice and courage. But he knew words were only the beginning. True strength lay in actions. At the same time, rumors began to spread that Tiberius had tightened security measures, and persecution could become even harsher. Secret agents appeared, even among those they considered friends. Nicandros urged vigilance and caution, but refused to let fear take hold of himself or those around him. Preparation for the upcoming day became more thorough and thoughtful. Nicandros and his team discussed every detail, from gathering points to signals to start the action, from escape routes to ways of passing messages. Everything had to be perfect. The fate not only of their small group, but of the hopes of the entire people depended on it. Amid these events, Nicandros reflected on the future. What would happen if they won? How would life in Rome change? He dreamed of a day when the kitchen would cease to be a secret refuge and become a place of joy, celebration, and peace. This vision gave him strength to move forward, no matter what. The winds of change, new allies, and the trials of trust. As winter tightened its cold grip on the city, Nicandros and his students continued tirelessly preparing for the decisive battle. With each passing day, it became clearer that their small group was turning into a true movement, capable of influencing Rome's fate and changing the course of history. One of the key moments was the arrival of new allies, people from all walks of life who, despite the risks, sought to support the fight for freedom. There were craftsmen who secretly brought materials and tools, merchants who delivered food and passed on news, even some officers, disillusioned by Tiberius's cruelty, began to secretly help Nicandros. But with growing support came new challenges, the greatest of which was trust. Nicandros understood that spies or traitors might hide among the new faces, and one wrong step could lead to the failure of the entire operation. Therefore, he devised a system of tests and trials to confirm the loyalty of everyone wishing to join their cause. Each new ally had to undergo challenges requiring not only courage, but honesty, the ability to keep secrets, and strength of spirit. Nicandros often said, "Freedom is not just a word, it is responsibility. We cannot allow weakness into our ranks." At this time, the kitchen became a true center of resistance, not only a place for cooking lessons, but for planning, sharing information, and supporting one another. Nicandros paid special attention to creating a trusting and safe atmosphere because their movement's strength depended on it. Among the new students was a young slave named Lucian, smart, observant, eager to learn, and with an unbreakable spirit. He quickly earned the respect of his comrades and became one of Nicandros's most loyal assistants. His story was an example of how even the harshest circumstances cannot break a person's will when hope lives in the heart. However, internal conflicts also arose. Some old students feared that the newcomers might change the movement's goals or weaken them. Nicandros tried to smooth over these disagreements, reminding everyone that the struggle was a shared path where there was a place for everyone who truly believed in freedom. Preparation for future actions grew increasingly complex and multi-layered. Discussions included not only military and strategic questions, but moral issues as well. How to treat prisoners, how to deal with those not yet ready to fight, and how to keep humanity in times of war. In the quiet kitchen, amid the aromas of spices and fresh herbs, Nicandros often reflected that true strength lay in unity and faith in one another. He understood that despite all hardships and trials, a bright future awaited them, a future they would build with their own hands. The taste of freedom, the kitchen as a stage for hope and change. Several months had passed since Nicandros and his students began their quiet but determined preparations. Winter had given way to spring, a time of renewal, growth, and nature's awakening. And in this period of change, Nicandros's culinary art became something greater than mere craftsmanship. It became a symbol of hope and freedom for all who dreamed of a new life. The kitchen, once a place where food was prepared only for the masters, had now become a space where ideas were born and plans were made. The scraping of knives, the aroma of fresh herbs and spices, and the quiet conversations about the future created a special atmosphere of unity and resolve. Nicandros no longer taught just recipes. He taught his students to feel and respect each ingredient and each person. His approach to cooking reflected his inner world: patience, attention to detail, a passion for perfection. He often said, "Cooking is an art, and art is the language of the soul. If you put your heart into every dish, it will speak for you." More and more people began coming to their secret kitchen, not just slaves and craftsmen, but free citizens seeking a place where they could learn, find support, and be inspired. Among them were women who brought knowledge of herbs and healing, elders who shared wisdom, and youth full of energy and hope. Nicandros understood that food preparation and the preparation for struggle were deeply connected. Every dish created in his kitchen was like a metaphor for resistance. The blending of different ingredients, the patience in cooking, the wisdom to wait for the right moment. Their movement was built the same way, with care, patience, and belief in something better. Together with his students, Nicandros developed new recipes, inspired by both Greek traditions and Roman culture. They experimented with flavors, textures, and colors, creating meals that could impress even the most demanding palates, yet carried within them a message of freedom and unity. An essential part of their work became organizing secret gatherings, where people shared not only food, but news, plans, and mutual encouragement. These evenings became true celebrations of spirit, a reminder that even in the darkest times, light and joy could be found. Nicandros also made sure to instill a sense of responsibility and pride in his students. He said, "Every dish we make is our story, our struggle, and our belief. Let the world know that we are not just slaves. We are people with souls and dreams." Over time, the kitchen became a magnet for many who wished to join the movement. Nicandros saw their small community growing, becoming stronger and more confident. He knew that many trials still lay ahead, but now they were ready to face them, together. Sparks over the coals. The secret brotherhood of kitchen and spirit. In the heart of Rome, hidden from the eyes of patricians and guards, Nicandros's kitchen had, by spring, finally transformed into a living laboratory of freedom. It was no longer just a place where food was prepared. It had become a sanctuary, where each day was an act of resistance, every dish a manifesto, and every gathering a step toward great change. Nicandros increasingly reflected on the ancient traditions of his homeland. He recalled the philosophers of Athens who taught that food was not only nourishment for the body, but a path to the purification of the soul. His mission in Rome now resembled that of an oracle. He was not just feeding people, he was awakening them. The dishes crafted by his hands became symbols. Lentil stew with cumin reminded them of endurance and humility. Flatbreads kneaded with olive oil and laughter through tears were dedicated to joy in the midst of suffering. As spring blossomed, new students began arriving at the hidden kitchen, not by force, but by calling. These were not only slaves and the poor, but also free citizens, philosophers, musicians, and former soldiers. What united them all was a desire for change. Among them stood out an elderly musician from Alexandria named Artemidorus. He brought with him the melodies of the East, turning each meal into a sacred rite. To the sound of his flute, Nicandros would prepare fish with fennel and pomegranate sauce, and around the table, people felt that food could speak. But all was not peaceful. Cracks began to appear within the movement, between the old and the new. Those who had walked a long road with Nicandros began to doubt the wisdom of inviting outsiders. One of his earliest students, the young and hot-tempered Publius, openly expressed his discontent. He feared that as their numbers grew, the group would lose its spirit. Nicandros did not suppress the dissent. Instead, he gathered all his students and held a ritual meal, a traditional Greek symposium. At the center of the table, he placed a simple stew, bread, and a bowl of wine. He spoke softly, but each word struck deep into the soul. Our struggle is like this table. It is held up not by gold, but by faith. Not by force, but by the flavor of what we create together. There are no outsiders here, only those hungry for justice. When 10 people share a single piece of bread, it becomes sacred. But if one is greedy for power, he is already no longer with us. These words moved everyone. Publius lowered his gaze. He understood. Nicandros' cause was bigger than himself, bigger than the kitchen. It was a spark capable of igniting a fire of change. From that day on, even more extraordinary things began happening in the kitchen. People brought in family recipes, forgotten dishes from nations known only by name on ancient scrolls. In one pot, the flavors of Africa, Gaul, and Asia Minor simmered. Food became a bridge between cultures. Nicandros began writing his own culinary scroll. Not merely a cookbook, but a chronicle of ideas, emotions, and stories. In the shadow of roaring, arrogant Rome, where power and fear ruled, a new language was being born. The language of the kitchen, the language of the heart. And Nicandros knew, even if they weren't destined to win tomorrow, they had already won today, because in everyone who tasted their bread, a fire had been lit. A feast in the darkness, the secret supper, and a vow over wine. When night draped Rome in its heavy cloak, and oil lamps flickered dimly in the homes of the nobility, beneath an old wine shop on the outskirts of Trastevere, people gathered whose names did not appear in the Senate's scrolls, but whose dreams could one day rewrite history. Nicandros, now a recognized leader and living symbol of the Brotherhood, was a man to whom others were drawn not by order, but by the pull of the heart. His face bore the marks of sleepless nights, burns from boiling oil, and furrows carved by tireless worry. But in his eyes still burned the same fire that had flared up the day he first lit a flame in Publius Lucanus's kitchen. Tonight's gathering was no ordinary dinner, but a vow. Under the guise of celebrating the new wine harvest, they arranged a secret supper, attended by dozens from every walk of life. Slaves, craftsmen, freedmen, philosophers. Even a physician exiled from his guild for being too humane. They stood shoulder to shoulder, no titles, no distinctions. At the center of the table sat a loaf of bread, baked from 3 kinds of flour sourced from across Italy. It symbolized unity, diversity, and patience. It had been kneaded and baked all day, its crust made perfect through care. Next to it, roasted duck glazed with honey and rosemary, a meal fit for kings, now served to the people. And of course, wine, red, rich, and bold as truth itself. Nicandros stood. Silence settled over the hall like a veil. His voice was quiet but strong, like the wine before him. We are not generals, not prophets, not the rich. We have no legions, no temples, no gilded couches. But we have something that even emperors fear to lose. Hope. We do not seek to destroy, but to nourish. Not to take, but to share. Let the food we create be the weapon that kills no one, but sets souls free. We give our word, never to cook for tyranny, only for those who live with dignity. He raised his cup. Dozens followed. And they made a vow, not to the gods, but to one another, that they would use their skills only for good, that they would remember the hungry at every feast, that every scent they conjured would seek truth, not flattery. That night they spoke and laughed, shared stories and herbs, recipes and wounds. An old man showed how in the East, Flour could be made from resin and almonds and stored for years. A young woman from Sicily told how her grandmother healed soldiers' wounds with the saffron broth. Everyone brought something: food, sorrow, and faith. Late that night, as the supper ended and the fire had nearly died, a boy approached Nicandros. He was the son of a craftsman whose shop had been burned for sympathizing with slaves. "Do you think they won't catch us?" the boy asked, looking up. Nicandros knelt, met his gaze, and replied, "They might catch us, but they won't stop us, because we are like yeast in dough. We may be few, but we make the whole world rise." Ash and flame, Nicandros's last feast. The empire boiled like a cauldron on the verge of explosion. The Catalan conspiracy spread through the streets in whispers and fear. The Senate trembled. The wealthy fortified their villas. And at the foot of the Palatine Hill, in a vine-covered cottage that smelled of old firewood and thyme, those who believed not in conspiracies, but in the power of simple bread, gathered one last time. It was the final evening when Nicandros's kitchen breathed life. The air itself seemed to understand. Something was ending. Everyone came. Old apprentices, new allies, even those who had left long ago but never forgotten. Wine flowed freely, but no one drank to drunkenness. They all knew this meal was more than food. It was farewell, or maybe the beginning of something greater than themselves. Nicandros was calm. His hands still held the grace of youth, but his heart bore the weight of eternity. He was not afraid. He understood. A dream cannot be burned like parchment. It can only be passed on, like sourdough to the next baker. He prepared a dish no one had seen before. It wasn't Greek nor Roman. It was theirs, made of dried beans, roasted onions, olive oil, honey, mustard seeds, rose petals, and wine. Its taste was strange, deep, tender with a quiet burn. They ate in silence. Each bite held forgiveness and gratitude. Then he stood, one last time. The fire cracked. The wine in their cups shimmered like the blood of the sun. When I was young, I dreamed of cooking for gods, then for kings, then for the people. But only now do I understand I cooked for truth, and truth cannot be cooked from a recipe. It must be endured like bread in a hungry winter. We built a temple, not from marble, but from salt, flame, and memory. This temple will fall, but the yeast remains. And someday, perhaps in 100 years, someone will knead the dough again and remember. Not us, but the taste of freedom. He embraced each person. Some he touched by the shoulder, some through tears. Late that night, they came to the kitchen. Without knocking, soldiers, faceless. Nicandros did not run. He stood by the hearth. In front of him, a ceramic bowl. Inside, dough he had not yet baked. He held it out to one of the soldiers. "Try it. It's for you, still warm." The soldier froze. No one expected such resistance. They took him away. No shouting, no blood. But in the days, weeks, and years that followed, his kitchen remained in memory, in secret fires, in recipes scratched into shards of clay, in herbs dried between old scrolls. They say that when Rome burned under Nero, and many houses fell, beneath one old cellar they found this carved into the stone. Nicandros fecit panem libertatis. Nicandros baked the bread of freedom, and someone left a single breadcrumb beside it, not as an offering, but as a promise.